Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined as always by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, and of course those dog-faced bounty soldiers.
Of course. All right. News-wise, I was looking when I do these little things, it's like, so we basically hit, or just about to hit officially the 1 year mark for Evan Gershkowitz's detention in Russia.
That's right.
Do you see any sign that the Russians are going to release him? Are they preparing for something bigger?
My understanding is they are trying to get higher level people out of our prisons in exchange for him. So until we decide to part with some pretty bad hombres, that they'll probably keep it.
Yeah, well, that's
They
a
don't
real
care. They
shame.
don't care about world opinion. They don't care about any consequences of not treating people right. So they're kind of free to do whatever they want.
Yeah, and then and Putin has been reelected, right? In an
That's right.
election. Ooh, that was
Yeah.
that was a tight one.
It was a nail biter, and he's got a little less tension.
Yeah, and to follow it, and after that we have this attack, in Russia
That's right.
for which I guess ISIS-K has and one they want to claim credit for this. Putin wants to blame Ukraine for this attack, but there are 130 or so people killed in this.
Yeah, in the
This attack.
theater. Our intelligence warned him about this too. They said that there was some kind of attack on the theater being planned, and that it did not. The source was not Ukraine; it was Chechen independence or something like that. You're right. And supposedly ISIS people are responsible. The thing about this is, if Putin, he needs to direct the ire towards Ukraine, because that justifies doing whatever he wants to do to Ukraine. Hey, you came in and killed a bunch of our people. You got it coming now, right? But if it is ISIS, right? If it's these kind of people, these are people that Putin has not proven he can control, right? They seem to be able to operate with impunity, get away with stuff, and do a lot of damage. And if that's the case, if Putin is not keeping those people safe, then election results or not, he's in political trouble, right? Because that his value statement is, I'm in control of all this stuff. I can make stuff happen for us because I have all the power. Well, if there's people here that have the wherewithal to challenge his power in this way, then he's not in charge. And so the whole balance of power in Russia is affected by this.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of has this whole thing like, this is why you need to reelect me, is because I control having everything's fine, fine and dandy. I control these things. You're going to be safe, and all of this, and we have our big enemy now really is Ukraine. We have to go after them, and all of this, and then this happens, and you're like, well, I mean, would that not make the Russian people think we're not so secure after all? How did this happen? And why did especially now with these reports that they were warned, why did they ignore the warnings? What did they not do, to prepare for this attack?
All right. Well, you have a warning that somewhere in the largest country on earth, a vast nation, a theater is going to get attacked, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? I mean, I guess you could, guard every theater, but I mean, that seems impractical too. You don't really know, and you don't really even know if this is true until it happens, right? So, I mean, U.S. intelligence is famous for not being all that accurate. So, I don't know. So, I don't know what they could do, right? I don't know really what you do with these warnings. There's stuff. There's sometimes, heightened warning is effective and makes a lot of difference, but it's not necessarily so.
So what I mean with this though, I mean if it is indeed ISIS, I mean, what is or can Putin do to prevent potential further attacks?
Figure out where they are and go bomb them to smithereens.
But yeah, I mean,
but he needs to do that. He needs to solve that problem, even if he wants to pretend this came from Ukraine right, and use it as a pretext for pummeling Ukraine. But you can't have, if there's any more Chechen attacks that are claimed by ISIS, right, then the story that they're all coming from Ukraine is going to fold. So he has to prepare for that. He's got to go get these guys one way or the other.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, even with his vast resources, they just kind of keep throwing people up at this thing with Ukraine. It's like it's very difficult for any country to fight a war on two fronts.
Mm-hmm.
You have to start dividing your attention and your resources. That makes things a lot harder. I mean, we've said time and time again. I mean, the whole Ukraine thing has been a huge slog. He doesn't need this kind of a monkey wrench in
That's
his
right.
in his whole war effort to try to take over Ukraine. So this is extremely problematic for him. Plus, I mean, they kill civilians. I mean, it has not been the pattern, of Ukraine, they're not really trying to kill, civilians. They're not going to attack theirs. They're trying to make this, these military strikes when they can. So it's a little bit harder to me too for Putin to make this, accusation that Ukraine came in there to a theater and killed these civilians. It doesn't really fly.
Right. But people sitting around having discussions like you and me are now get thrown in jail. Right. Speculating on whether he's telling the truth is no bueno in Russia. So
yeah. We can say that here. We just can't say that there.
Right. That's right. So, the Russian people will not hear countervailing views. They won't be widely available.
That's the thing too. I mean, you about just kind of the, in a lot of these countries that are similar, that have kind of got this, dictatorial type of setup, or, whatever you want to call it, autocratic, whatever, that when you have these leaders, dissent, is supposedly allowed, but in reality, if, when the government, finds dissenters, they're quashed. Right. And
same as here.
Yeah. And just, and just look, I mean, to me, I mean, China has been the biggest, purveyor of this, because, we saw that movement in Hong Kong, and, there's no one, that can speak up, about Hong Kong anymore. I mean, and they continue to tighten their grip on this, and wanting to throw people in jail and fine people and stuff like this. And it's abhorrent. And I don't know, I get a little bit, sometimes I get upset sometimes that, we stand idly by, while they do that. Of course, we've got the whole Biden family, China connection, and all of these other, things that are going on there. But we're definitely not standing up to China at all. And they're really
bid $25 million to the Biden family.
Yeah, and then
what were they paying for? That's what they're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, and they've literally rolled over, Hong Kong, and it's just such a tragedy, where you chase out people and businesses and everything like that. And it makes me wonder whether or not I would ever desire to visit Hong Kong again. I don't, just would feel that it's just not as free as it used to be, even in the initial years after the handover, from Britain to China. It was still, I was there, I visited, and it was great. But I kind of wonder what it's like today, with all this stuff going on, that, I think the whole, atmosphere has changed among the citizenry there, in terms of their outlook on things.
Yeah, much more fearful.
Yeah,
much less, commerce, outward looking. It's much more inward looking and fearful and cautious, and right. I mean, that's what totalitarian does, crushes the spirit.
Yeah. Well, I also thought, I'm not sticking to my list here, but just things that are popping in my head too, just as I read the Wall Street Journal and other places. Just, it seems now more than ever, with regard to China, that more of the financial analysts and experts and whatever you want to call them are now standing up a little bit and calling into question China's, figures on their GDP and the growth of their economy and stuff like that. You know, we've been sitting here discussing and talking about the Ministry of Health and what they do out of Gaza, in terms of what Israel is doing, how many civilians are killing, and all these the brutality of it all. But it is coming from a propaganda point, and yet for as long as we know, our analysts and experts have been willing to take whatever China has said, that we had 9.8% growth in this year, and inflation is just at this level, and et cetera, et cetera. Pretty much at their word. They really wasn't much dissent. Now it seems that for whatever reason that we've seen a little more transparency, or we've been able to see the property collapse in China. And then, and that has led to the fact, to where, analysts are now saying, okay, we've kind of covered this up or let this go, but we now need to tell people that whatever the government reports, take that with a grain of salt, because it looks like it doesn't look like A, it looks like B.
Right. So like for instance, government makes a lot of decisions in China that they don't make here, like how many apartments to build, for instance, right? So they have these huge swaths of apartments they're having to knock down because they overbuilt. They don't have anyone wants to live there. So, you're spending zillions and zillions of dollars that you don't, it's not properly accounted. It's not put in the right place. The need analysis was not done. And so, people start to realize there's a lot of stuff on paper there that's not real. So, when you're asked, I guess when Z was here, when he was in San Francisco for the Chinese New Year celebrations, he asked Biden for money. He wanted the U.S. to give China money to stabilize its economy. So you think about for one thing, we're $36 trillion in debt. We're adding $1 trillion in debt about every 110 days. And, this guy, he wants to borrow money from us. I mean, where do you think we're getting our money, right? I mean, a lot of it we're getting from China. So, I mean, something's going on there, right? So, it is. There's a big credit bubble coming in House of Cards. And I've seen a few things in the last couple of weeks saying that we are headed for a big, serious recession and that it's unavoidable. And I don't know, I'm not an economist. I read these things. They seem reasonable, but, the other side seems reasonable too. So, who knows what the truth is, but there's a pretty consistent warning sounding that the credit bubble's about to crash.
Yeah. I mean, because economic cycles kind of say that, we're due for one, right? And they've been predicting one with all the things with the interest rate issues and all these things that have hit, befallen the economy. And yet, the economy is still it's still moving forward in general, and stock market valuations may be getting a little toppy at this point, and kind of being carried by just a handful of companies and things like that.
Right.
But it's nothing like what's happening in China, when when China, even now, when they talk about their growth and stuff like that, you're like, he's like, how do you report this GDP growth when there's now rampant stories about your real estate collapse? It amazes me, but I guess this is the way the system runs. And in China, it's like I feel for people who have bought into the whole all that real estate bubble that they had, and they went ahead and they paid their money, and the builders basically didn't realize, in essence, China, the government allowed this to be nothing but a bunch of giant Ponzi schemes. So the money they were taking in was going to finish off the apartments of the people that paid in first, and then the people near the end, they ran out. When they ran out of money, they were left with nothing, and there's no recourse for them, right? They
Right.
put down their money and they have no way of getting that back. If you buy from a builder here in the United States, you have a shot, maybe not great, but there are there are some legal recourses, as a way to try to get some of your money back, and and all of
There's
this
enough
stuff.
to dissuade most people from trying to do it.
Right. You're not going to see the
That's
same.
right.
You're not going to see the same kind of thing happen here as you would over there. But there are no controls, I guess,
Right.
in essence. And so you just had all of the stuff, and the government. I think the government loved the idea that we're going to build these big gleaming cities and apartment buildings and stuff like that, and workers would flock there, and all of these kinds of things. They'd flock from the countryside and all this stuff. But the whole thing's unraveling, and part of that, once again, part of that unraveling is also that the population isn't really increasing like it was before. So they
It's
don't.
declining.
Right. So they don't
Right.
have they don't have this. I mean, Asia is seeing these declines, and so they don't
Historically
have.
low birth rates,
Yeah.
extinction rate birth rates, and you got 119 boys for every 100 girls, right? That makes the problem really, really tough.
Yeah.
That's more central planning. Really, they're really going to be a textbook study in why you do not central plan, right? Because all their big central planning initiatives are crushing them now. They're crushing under the weight of the financial commitments they made, the law and order commitments they made, the population control commitments they made are all coming back, and and causing great penalties for the country.
I'm just kind of curious too, because of this. I think this is going to be inevitable, at least the way the structure is now, is that, with this imbalance of male, female thing too, um, what that does. I mean, there's just, there's nothing they can really do at this point to reverse it. I mean, I know that other countries in Asia have been, they're trying all kinds of things to try to get back on track, but that's a big nut to crack, because this generation of younger people, they're not as interested in that. They have a lot of other things going on in their lives, and for a lot of them, getting married and raising a family is just not high on their agenda anymore. This is not the 1950s and 1960s or whatever. It's it's a whole new ball game, and it becomes a crisis point for lots of countries in terms of where do we find people, the workers. We need more. We need women who are willing to to get married and have raise children, and so that the workforce can continue on. But there's going to
We
be
need
these.
to quit calling them chumps for doing that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at you go on and look at social media, it's like people just pummel the moms, like you're a chump, you're just doing what your husband says, you don't have a life of your own, and I mean, it's very they're beat up on for doing this. So you got to remember, they're not doing what they're supposed to do either.
Yeah, I mean, if you tried to have a nuclear family, you're just gonna get just broadly torn apart. There's going to be attack after attack after attack. That's not it doesn't fit the left wing mindset of what it's kind of become pets over people in a lot of places.
Right.
We see lots. My own my youngest son. He's like, okay, when are you going to start having children here? It's like, you got 2 dogs.
Right.
The
You're good on dogs.
The dogs are nice, but we want grandchildren before we
Yeah.
leave some more. It's like, and there's a lot of we don't try to push it too hard because it makes them uncomfortable, I think. But it's just like, you guys aren't getting any younger. Things have got to get going here. But
yeah, I hear you, and there's a lot of people are talking to their kids about this, and there's a lot going on that. The other thing is like, how do you sell it, right? Because they make the argument that it's a lot of trouble, right? It dominates your time, takes all your money, all this kind of stuff. It's a real commitment. 7 days, you have kids 7 days a week, right? You don't get to offload them on Friday and hang out for the weekend. I guess you saw this lady got arrested that she went on vacation and just left her kid in the house. He was like 2. That's right. There it is. But I think though the way to sell it is it makes you happy. the kids are hilarious. I mean, I don't know. Mine are. They do all kind of stuff that's just, unbridled hilarity, and they're fun to be with, and they're yours, right? They're people that that's they're little yous. It's like what does the next generation model of you look like? Well, there it is, and so it's interesting to watch, and it's very fulfilling, and it's not, I've had a blast being a dad. My kids are boys.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think people should explain that it doesn't make you miserable. It makes you, it's fun, and it's funny. It's hilarious. My daughter was born on my 43rd birthday. And, I've laughed a lot more in the, 19 years since than the 43 before, right? It's just been a blast. So, I think that's one thing to talk to people about is like, they're telling you this is miserable, but it's really not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the things you hit on there too, though, is just expense. People have put way too much focus on the expense of raising a child. Okay, we know it's not going to be cheap. I mean, you got to feed them, you got to clothe them, you got to send them to school, and you may or may not pay for their college education. Maybe they'll help get some scholarships, or maybe they'll work through college or whatever.
Right.
And all of that, yeah, it is expensive. But it's just to me, it's just so silly to put a price tag on a child, on a human being like that.
Yeah, they go there like, well, we get dessert at the restaurant. I'm like, I get dessert too. That's why I look like this.
Yeah,
but I mean, so what that you have a lot of money, right? You're 80 years old. What's going to happen to you? Who cares about you when you're 80 years old? Right. Not the guy, the dessert guy. He can't remember you being in his restaurant, right?
Right.
You're not his concern.
Right. That's the other part of that is that if you chose to not have kids, it's like, okay, we see, and we're seeing a lot more of this in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, of where as we age, we need more help. Right. And so things will go wrong in the sense of, look, I mean, we had my mother with me, with us for what, 13 years after my father passed. We had no idea we were going to spend 13 years kind of watching over her. But that's something that we felt that we had to do. That was, as only child, my wife stepped up and helped out a ton. She was great while I was at work to take care of my mom, and we got some extra help here and there, towards the end. But I think about these couples that chose not to have kids but want to have 2 dogs and 5 cats and whatnot. Well, the dogs and the cats aren't going to outlive you, and they'll never be able to take care of you. Exactly who is going? If you should need help, who takes care of you? I mean, are you going to? Will you actually have the resources to go into a nursing home, which is expensive, or because there won't be any kids to take care of you in an in-home care basis, which if you're not really severely disabled, is really the better way of doing it. It really is better for the individual to be cared for in a home, rather than this nursing home situation. So they're very short term in their thinking. They don't really think the long term. And how do you put a price on the joy and the happiness? I just don't see how you can do that at all.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, maybe the left wants that. Maybe that's part of it. So the left says, yeah, we'll figure out a way to get science to have men have babies, and everything will be fine.
Yeah. And and it's also like, what is your legacy? What because even oh, okay, yeah, I would do that too. So yeah, that's the only thing I think is like, I know a lot of people who move to be by their grandkids. Like their grandkids are someplace and they're like, we're not doing nothing here. We're going to go over there. Right. I see that more and more because they want to be with those people. And it's like, and I think it's like, I coach these teams, and I always tell the grandparents when I meet them, the grandparents bring us good luck, right? The more grandparents we have at our game, more likely we are to win. It does seem to have some small correlation to fact, right? So, there have been games where I didn't think I was going to win, but we had a bunch of grandparents there and we did win, right? So, but it's what an enormous thing that like 2 generations of your family is there with you. Like values are getting conveyed. Like what it looks like to be a good, responsible adult is being conveyed, right? So I mean, like the examples are being properly set, right? And the fact that they're honoring family. Like a lot of societies, like China has no pension system at all, right? So it's like you're not dumping them on the government to take care of. All the things the government does for you in China, that one you got to do yourself. You got to take care of your parents and your grandparents and so forth. So I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that is our responsibility, and I think that when you say we're going to put government in charge of taking care of some of these things, right? Then the thing doesn't get taken care of. Like the leftists, they're making a big deal on X and elsewhere about there was a summer lunch program. The federal government, the state had to put up matching funds, and that you would feed kids lunch in the summer through the schools or whatever. And a lot of states are saying no. And it's like, oh, you're so cruel. You don't care if your kids starve. Okay. Let's look at that. If the parents, I get it during the school year, the kid can't go somewhere else to get a meal. And if you can't afford to put stuff in his box for him to take, right, something's got to happen there. Your kid's hungry all day. Okay. But in the summer, you do have a choice where you are, right? The kid has a choice. Parents have a choice, right? The kid's choice subject to approval of the parents, right? So, if we say, okay, we're going to say the state also pays for all their meals in the summer, all right, when do the parents pay for meals for the kids, right? Because that is, they're right about that. It is the parents' responsibility to feed the kids. So if the government takes that responsibility from you, okay, so if you have a kid who can never get a meal, right, every meal that kid ever gets is, depends on government handout, right? Then what is going on in that home, right? That you never have enough money or organization or food or caring or wherewithal to provide your kid a meal. What is your house like? What kind of environment is that to raise kids in? I mean, I can't believe that somebody who cannot ever provide a meal for their kid is also providing a great place to live, right? I just don't believe that. So if you're going to tell me that you cannot ever pay to feed your kid, I'm going to say we need to put your kid somewhere where people are responsible enough to feed their kids.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things with the socioeconomics of the kids in school systems and things like that. It ranges all over the place, but yeah, you kind of makes you wonder. It's like the school system is supposed to feed the kids year round, in essence, for this.
Every meal? No.
Yeah,
that's not what schools are for.
Yeah, no. I mean, it does. I think go back to the home life, and that it's a broad brush at this point, but for the families that are begging for that program, it's kind of like, look, you've got to this is coming. You need to be doing something. I mean, and if it's just a meal, what do they do about the other meals, and why are the taxpayers paying for it, and all of these things.
Right. That's right.
Right. This kind of
okay. So they are eating, right? They're not dying of starvation. So
they're not showing up,
but not their kids.
Yeah, they're not showing up emaciated or something like that, and starving to death, and so you calls into question. But it's that whole thing. When we provide these safety nets, it does make certain groups of parents very lazy, thinking, oh well, look, the government's going to take care of me, care of my kids. I don't have to, I can abdicate my responsibility as a parent and turn it back to the local school system or government or wherever. And this has been a longstanding problem in our society, is just that whole social safety net of, we're going to provide all of this stuff, but how many times have we seen kind of the cycle of poverty go from generation to generation? Everybody's just like, oh yeah, I can have babies because that's not going to be a problem. I'm going to get extra welfare and I'm going to be fine. I don't mind living my life like this and not really thinking about the welfare of the children.
Right. And then those kids grow up and they've never seen anything different. So that doesn't look like a bad decision to them either.
Right,
right?
exactly, and
So
that's why I said this whole cycle, it just continues.
perpetuates.
That cycle is just continues and continue ever and ever. So
Right.
that's not, you know,
And so the left, they walk away saying, "Hey, we gave you a free lunch." Those guys didn't want to give you a free lunch. We gave you a free lunch. Okay, but you didn't help us. You consigned us to generations more of this because you made it okay to be a dropout parent.
right,
Right.
right. Yep. All right. So we'll switch quickly for a little bit, just locally for this whole the story that I guess has become a national story because with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore,
Yep.
a ship hit a pylon and basically took down the bridge early in the morning yesterday. It was like what 1:40 a.m. or thereabouts,
Mm-hmm.
um, and luckily they were able to stop most traffic. Unfortunately, it was a road crew that had been working there filling potholes or whatever, and looks like there are six workers that are unaccounted for, and they've called off rather than a rescue, now it's a recovery effort at this point. I mean, at 1:40 in the morning, it's dark, and how you got to get crews out there. The water was cold. We've hit, we're still kind of in a cold spell in the early
Water
morning.
temperature was in the 40s.
Yeah. So you can't survive very long, under those circumstances, and they certainly weren't prepared to fall into the water either. So this is a tragedy for the loss of human life, but it has some economic impact too. I mean, you have the traffic that normally travels that bridge, that they're not going to be able to do that for a while. Also, it affects the port of Baltimore, and I understand that a lot of the shippers are going to try to reroute what the goods, like GM's has cars that they normally ship into Baltimore, and they're going to go to ship them, to maybe South Carolina or somewhere else, or there are other ports that they can go to, but it will probably add some extra cost to the goods that normally would flow through Baltimore, because their endpoint will be, offloading will be further away from where they need to really be, and then they'll still have to be transported from there to their final destination. But I don't know. I know that, at least for me, for some of the Facebook, for instance, like I saw some conspiracy theories about this, but I don't know. I mean, it's like, right. Throw conspiracy theories at this. I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous at this point to start blaming these other things. But the port has, they have rules about who can pilot a ship, out of the waters and stuff like that. And
you hire a local pilot. You get a
yeah,
guy to come in and drive you to the edge, basically.
right.
And the guy was on the boat, and he was part of signaling for the Mayday. So
yeah,
they had done what they were supposed to do. It looks like they lost power on the ship, and then they tried to get it back, and it came back briefly, and then it didn't come back, and they couldn't steer the ship without the power. I don't really know a lot about ships. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I would not rule out that, there was some kind of subterfuge somewhere along the way. Why did it lose power? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Right. But, the thing about the bridge, though, is, they don't want to put hazmat loads through the tunnels. Right. And like the most people like me and you driving from here to New York or whatever, we wouldn't go on the Key Bridge. We would go through the tunnels, right?
Right.
And so now the bridge is for trucks that cannot use the tunnels. So what do you do about all the hazmat stuff that goes into the port of Baltimore, and how do you get it off of the Sparrows Point or whatever, and how does that work? So I mean, that's going to be the big nightmare for a long time to come, until they can get something.
Yeah, I mean, the tunnel is long enough that a mishap would be disastrous. So,
right.
And something like that. So you don't want that. So the bridge makes a heck of a lot of sense, is that, to travel that way is a lot better. But yeah, this is going to create a lot of problems.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, you got to get the old bridge out of the water.
Yeah.
Because like you can't have other ships coming in and red it. Okay. Well, see, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And ships, a lot of how ships are propelled and so forth is old technology. And so, it's not impossible that it breaks.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like this is like trucks. There are a lot of trucking companies who don't really maintain their fleets. And you
Yeah,
can imagine how expensive it is to try to maintain a freighter or anything like that. These big hulking, uh, miles of steel and stuff like that. But I mean, if you lose power and you can't steer something like that, and you become listless, and you're now just kind of with the current, that's a problem. That is a
yeah,
huge problem. And yeah, this at the very least, I guess it probably winds up looking at, they'll be looking into, the ownership and the maintenance and all of this stuff. And, whether or not they, with these kind of things, whether or not you can actually find them and, get something out of that, I don't know, because a lot of these things tend to be just a layer of a bunch of different things going on there,
yeah.
and all that. But yeah, it's just a miserable mess. And, I mean, the only reason I first knew about it is I had a friend of mine who lives in Baltimore, and I guess he was up in the morning. And when I got up and got on my computer at 3:30 or whatever, there was a Facebook message from him with this story, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
because I wasn't going looking for that at 3:30 in the morning
No,
necessarily,
no. Yeah.
and
Think
all
about
that.
all the
But
news people had to just get out of bed and go crank it up right there in the middle of
yeah,
the night.
yeah. But my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the
Yeah,
workers, and
absolutely.
because this is just going to be a big mess. Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, that depending
Yeah.
upon, yeah, if they had whoever was covering that ship, I mean, this is a huge loss. And
Especially if it's the second time it's happened, because that
yeah,
happened to a pretty
yeah, I
high
mean,
premium.
this you would say the state of Maryland or whatever, who, operating the bridge. I mean, there's so many people, there's so many ways of, getting sued by so many different entities and people, that, yeah, that would, if you're not a well-funded insurance company, you're going to have a problem, in doing that, and taking care of that. So Trump had good news this week in the sense of he got his bond reduced, that ridiculous bond. Now, 175 million versus 454, 64, or whatever it was, it's still too high, in my opinion,
Right.
right? But it's better, and it's doable. He can secure, he can secure a bond against something like that versus the bigger number. But so this is ridiculous. I mean,
Also, a finding that the trial judge went too far.
yeah,
Right. I mean, the biggest thing is the appellate court is saying the superior court in New York, it's all backwards. Superior court is the lowest court. Gets the highest regard is the one that people actually go to. So the Engeron, is gone way over. His idea was to punish and work with Letitia James, do everything they can to make Trump look bad and go broke and have to sell his properties and so forth. And it now looks like that they've cut the amount that he has to post, and it looks like that his has pretty good chance of succeeding on appeal. A lot of the cases against Trump, there was good news for him on a few of the fronts, right? It's good news. It looks like the 1522 stuff is going to get thrown out. He's already had some of the Georgia indictment was thrown out. Six of the counts. All the counts related to the perfect call to Raffensperger, which Trump has said all along. I did nothing wrong in that phone call, and when that phone call was raised, when people said, "Oh, this is going to be an issue," Trump said, "Oh, well, here's the transcript of the call. Read for yourself every word I said." Right. So he obviously did not think he had done anything wrong, and the judge has already thrown out those counts. So. I think that's interesting because, like, you see the left, they're always harping on I need 11,000 votes. Well, he's not in trouble for that anymore. So a lot of the rest of that case looks like it's on the verge of falling apart too. So, other than the Alvin Bragg case, which has its own sets of problems, it doesn't look like any of them have any chance of coming to trial before the election.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder in the back of my mind, when Trump was boasting, before that he had $400 million in cash or whatever it was, whether or not that doesn't give Engeron a chance to say, okay, well, here's the fine. It's like,
right. That's what Trump said. He's like, he found out how much money I had, and that's how he set the fine.
Yeah. So, and set the bar up there like that. It's like, this is where it's like, Trump, why don't you just not say those things? Can you not? Is there a
Well,
way
I
not to
mean,
put that
otherwise
out?
you're letting their version be the version everybody hears.
Yeah.
Everybody always says, "Oh, if he would just shut up." Well, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't help him. They're doing these things to him anyway.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if it would have been as high if he hadn't thrown out that initial number. I think there's no doubt to me that these are all political trials, show trials.
Right.
There's a vendetta going on here, and all of this, and so and it's all been I mean, the reason that Trump is the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party, it's largely is thanks to all these things. I mean,
right,
right. I
and
mean,
ahead in all 7 battleground states.
yeah, I mean,
and the popular vote, right?
yeah, he got a big boost from this, which has probably befuddled the Democrats and the left. It's like we thought we'd sink him, but no, we've actually helped raise him up, and to a large degree that he's succeeding, and that's definitely striking fear in their hearts for November as it approaches.
He's succeeding. They have a big cash advantage, right? The Democrats have there. Oh, we got way more money now. It's like, yeah, you do, but he is raising money without ever leaving home, right? He's sitting down there at Mar-a-Lago. He has these expensive dinners that people come to all the time to raise money, and he has he's selling. He has the new what is it? Proud to be an American Bible that he's selling. With Lee Greenwood, and it's got all the foundational documents of the country. People don't realize. The leftists all mocking that. Oh, Trump, who is he to sell the Bible? Well, a lot of people are like, man, the Bible gave birth to the principles on which the nation was founded, right? And like Trump followers hold this to be true, to a far greater degree than non-Trump followers, right? That it is Judeo-Christian values. It is informed by rights that come to it or endowed to us by our Creator, right? Remember, there was, I guess you heard Prisbilla. Did you see that one? She is. She's Heidi Prisbilla or something like that. She's
okay, yeah.
Talking heads. And she got these Republicans. They don't think their power comes from government or the president or anything. They think it comes from God. Can you believe that? And it's like, well, it's only because the Constitution says that. That's the reason we got off on this crazy belief, right? So and she's been mercilessly mocked, and deservedly so, for that statement. But the fact is Trump is putting together some powerful forces, right? That, a lot of the people who believe in Trump do believe that, like, if we will run America as he, not detail by detail, but, as he generally describes, we will be running it in a godlike way, right? We will be running it in a way that God would appreciate. We would be fighting abortion and injustice and human trafficking, and try to make people happy on their side of the border without trying to sneak onto our side of the border and stuff like that. So the fact of putting all those things together, those foundational documents, and Lee Greenwood's involved with it, so it's it's full MAGA indicia all over it. It's a smarter marketing technique than anybody thinks, right? Yeah, and Bibles have been sold on much worse pretenses.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I do think it's a little amusing. I mean, you can leverage the Trump name, which among his followers, you can sell just about anything.
Right.
The real credibility for a Bible, with Trump's name on it, really, I think, comes from the fact that it's, Lee Greenwood, and they call it "God Bless the USA," based on, type of thing. And so that is because I don't think, if you interviewed a bunch of, 100, Trump supporters, MAGA people, that they're going to really say that Trump is like this big, God-fearing, church-going guy.
You're a spiritual leader, right? You're right. That's right.
Yeah. When is
okay, but the other candidate is assaulting your faith, investigating your church, right? Trying to jail your supporters, right? That's that the choice is, it's a binary choice, Yeah. Neither one of them are perfect, but what Trump's doing is a lot closer to what those people want than what Biden's doing.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So, we're in this interesting period here where we've had, several House announcements about retirements. Some had planned to to leave after the election. Though Mike Gallagher has now decided to leave next month. He's just a few weeks away from leaving. So it temporarily, as these guys leave office before the election, it actually, reduces the House majority and what Speaker Johnson has to deal with in trying to get, things done, at all, and just makes things very tenuous. I don't recall a period of time where we've seen, House members resign like this, before their term is over. I mean, really just leave like this, in the numbers that they're leaving, and then, creating this very potential crisis for the leadership. I mean, he's at the point now where it's like, he may need Democrat help until the special elections are held and bring his numbers back up in the Republican districts again. But it's still just a razor thin margin. And I really don't, I think you're probably more optimistic than I am about November. But I still think the jury's out as to exactly which way the House goes in November, because I just don't see the Republican House as having been all that effective.
I agree that the House, the control of the House is up for grabs. It's not assured. My optimism says that the rising tide of Trump winning a strong election at the that's right. The rising tide of Trump and Senate candidates, so the Republicans should gain control of the Senate. It's almost hard to see them losing it at this point. Will lift enough votes to keep the House in Republican hands, but that's far from a certain thing. I'm saying that's the hope, but that's not the plan, right? The plan is, on the other hand, the plan looks a little more hopeful now because of the change of control at the RNC. Contrary to the Democrats are like, you put his bimbo daughter-in-law in charge. She's actually done a pretty good job of like getting started on the stuff that needed to be started on, going after, and they're working with Scott Pressler from down here. I think you know him, right? You know who he is? Yeah.
Yep.
So he's working with them. Scott Pressler says there's 80,000 hunters in Wisconsin who are not registered to vote. 80,000 people who are hunters in Wisconsin, in a battleground state, maybe the closest of all the battleground states, who are not registered to vote. Now, you sign up those 80,000, get them to the polls. What percentage of those people do you think vote for Trump? Right, probably 3/4, right? If they're gun people, if they're Second Amendment people, it's hard to see them not being for Trump. So they're identifying those publics, and they're actually committing the resources to go after them and so forth. So I look for good things to happen, some momentum to develop over the summer behind them. But the question was, he has it'll be down to 2 votes, a 2-vote majority with the exit of Garcia. But I think whoever wins Kevin McCarthy's district, which will be a Republican, that's a certain. I think there's 2 Republicans running at this point. 2 Republicans in the runoff.
Right. I think
that gives him that one back. And Garcia is waiting till April to leave.
Gallagher.
I'm sorry, Gallagher. Because he wants to make sure that they cannot hold a special election to fill his seat. Right? He wants his seat to stay vacant until November, rather than have another Republican get in there and vote with Mike Johnson. Everybody wants to trash Mike Johnson. There's now a motion to vacate the chair from Marjorie Taylor Greene. No one's doesn't seem to be a lot of energy behind taking up that motion, right? Voting it, bring it to the floor. Unlike McCarthy, he did not promise to bring any motion to vacate to the floor, so he's not bound by the McCarthy promise. But he stood his ground on Ukraine. He stood his ground on the border bill, right? Those were bills where like everybody in Washington is leaning on him to cave to the uniparty, and he's not done it. And he's held in line the caucus with a 3-vote majority. So I don't know that I don't know how you can find a lot of fault with him right now. I mean, he can't move forward in the current climate, but he's not taking any steps backwards. And I think you have to attribute to that to a lot of personal strength on his part. You go down to a meeting at the White House and you have the president, the Republican leadership of the Senate, the Democrat leadership of the Senate, Democrat leadership of the House, all ganging up on you to make you change your mind, and you walk out of there without changing your mind. That's pretty strong. That doesn't happen a lot in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, he held the line on some things, but I mean, the Republicans went through a lot of turmoil in ousting McCarthy to come to this point, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene, throws this motion to vacate. Now, I think she's just threw that out there as a trial balloon or whatever, and just because she is who she is, and that
she's mad about the funding
and there's
bill.
There's nothing that's going to happen to it. I mean, Matt, I don't think Matt Gaetz is as angry now as he was, back in October,
right?
Or, whatever. So it's there's not, like you said, there's just really not enough steam here behind that to happen, and they really have to think that there's 7+ months, or right around 7 months, till the election, 7.5 months maybe till the election. So they've got, this is not a fight you want to have with an election, staring right down at you at this point. You're just way too close, and let's focus on doing the work and getting out there and getting reelected and electing other Republicans and keeping that majority. Now, what's interesting is that, and I know we've touched on this before, is the position of where Larry Hogan is in Maryland. There is some polling that shows that Hogan is solidly in the lead right now against his opponents. Now, we don't know who his opponent will really be. We don't know if it's going to be David Trone or Angela Brooks. So once they have their primary, which is in early May, I think, it'll be a clearer picture, because he'll actually have an opponent, head to head for sure. And we'll see what kind of money and what kind of things, that are going to go on there. Hogan is definitely riding a wave of his popularity from when he was a governor and his high name recognition, which neither Trone nor also Brooks have quite as much.
Right.
But there are also polls that show that Maryland says that they want the Democrats to control Congress, something like 55%. So they're not matching up, right? It's like you've got these people saying, hey, let's, we love Larry Hogan, but on the other hand, so they're not apparently associating one with the other quite yet. It's still kind of, for this, maybe still early, because until they have a definitive candidate, that's how it's going to be. But I am heartened by what initially is happening with Hogan, and I think he's got enough momentum. He's likable enough. He did enough in the state. He didn't look. He governed the way he could, only way he could govern Maryland. In essence, he having a Democrat legislature the way that was, there's just you can't do too much, and so he picked around the corners and stuff like that. And because he went anti-Trump, I think he attracts more people this way. There'll be some Republicans that won't vote for him because of that stance. But there are not a lot of Republicans in the state of Maryland, and you can get those middle of the road. All those independents, unaffiliated, you can get that. They're becoming a growing number in Maryland. They could easily offset, just disgruntled Republicans who don't like Hogan.
Right, but it's a long-term problem. He's a problem. Yeah. Collins is a problem. They're sort of on your side, but when you need them most, they let you down. It's just, I don't want this to get to where we're depending on Larry Hogan to save the country, because, he's clearly not up to it.
Right.
Also, one thing I think is interesting, though, in Maryland is that the party seems to be lining up behind also Brooks and not Trump. And, like I just was Sharon Baker, a former PG county executive, endorsed her. And someone else I saw, a big party person, Democrat in Maryland, endorsed her. She's starting to collect the endorsements. So, I don't know. Trone seems to me to be the more formidable candidate, but, he almost lost to Neil Parrott. So maybe not. So it'll be interesting to see.
All right. Just one quick thing here, then, and we'll wrap it up. So, gotta love Senator Kennedy.
Love Senator Kennedy,
and that whole thing on with this Olympic skier Schumacher on climate change, on it was just hilarious just to watch him because he's supposedly the expert witness, and this guy couldn't explain diddly squat at all, and got totally embarrassed by Kennedy, and he's just like, yeah, Kennedy, I give Kennedy credit for being prepared and knowing what to do, and taking these people that the left props up because, oh, he's an Olympic skier, this is a named person.
He's seen the effects of global warming.
Right,
it's like,
right,
okay,
right.
so tell us about it. Well,
and Kennedy totally ripped him apart. So anyway,
yeah, he also does that. He does that to the judicial nominees, right? And he'll say, "What's Article 3?" And they're like, "I don't really know." It's like, okay, you can't be a judge if you don't know what Article 3 of the Constitution is. You just can't do it, right? And he gets these things, and he gets them on like basic, easy, law 101 questions. And the judges, the people the Biden administration is putting forth as judicial candidates don't know. So you have to, he's raised an issue that, like, they don't care one whit if the people they nominate for judgeships are competent to be judges. They don't care at all. They want ideology and nothing else. So that's part of what's happened in the judicial system. Yeah, so, Kennedy's doing a great service for the nation and what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's like if you're on the other side and you're going to be facing Senator Kennedy, you better put somebody good up there.
Yeah, that's right.
Not some celebrity status person who'll just talk about all this ephemeral stuff and all this, but who actually knows and can go toe to toe, because this is just a constant embarrassment for them that Kennedy just takes them down, each one of them, and he does just dismantle them. So
anyway. I thought the kid, though, I thought what he did at the end was smart. He's like, I don't know about that. I'm here to talk about this other. Yeah. It's like, okay, but you got to know about that, right? And Kennedy made his point. You can't come up here telling us what science policy is and don't know anything about science, right? So, but the kid, he stayed out of trying to pronounce on stuff he didn't know about. So,
right. All right, we're at the end here. I'll give you about 60 seconds.
60 seconds. I punched the wrong button. Let's see. Or the whole Ronna McDaniel thing is just hilarious. So Ronna McDaniel was hired by MSDNC to be, on their panels and whatnot, and then all the personalities on there, went berserk, and so they decided to unhire her. So she's now saying she's going to sue them. I don't know how actionable that is. I think a big fat check will get written to Ronna at some point out of all this. But the lasting, searing question about this is, one of the 3 major news networks in the country is now basically being run by, radical left-wing nut jobs, right? And they tell the bosses they can hire and so forth. That's not going to be good. That's not going to redound to the benefit of NBC. This precedent set here is horrifying. So, I don't know. Maybe some will say, well, don't hire her. Put your emphasis on not hiring people like that in the first place. But the notion that's getting argued here is that anybody who had anything to do with Jan 6 or Trump, is unfit to comment on politics in the country. That's what they're positing. That's what they're claiming. Okay, so if you allow that idea to take hold, right, then there's virtually no leftard, radical leftist ideas you will not embrace. So. I think that a bad thing happened for that network, and I think that it's going to get much worse before it gets better.
All right, yeah, and just on that, as I close too, the thing too is that Ronna McDaniel was not going to be Michael Steele or Steve Schmidt or these other guys who will just turn around and bash the party, which is what they want to be under the label of Republican, right? She was going to probably stand up for the party and a lot of other things, and that also that got under the skin of the left. So anyway, with that, I need to wrap it up. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. Thanks for those who joined us today, and we will see you again next week.